Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Sisters of Legacy. We are going to go ahead and run our intro, and we'll be right back. All right, everyone, we are back. So, thank you guys for joining us tonight. We appreciate you watching and your support. If you're watching a replay, you're always welcome to put some comments in. We'll circle back around and see them. So, ladies, my wonderful co host, thank you guys so much for joining me and being consistent and being here. Uh-oh, I so appreciate it. Did I do that wrong? Oh, leave it up to me to do something wrong. I appreciate you guys immensely. So, of course, we have Katrina Taylor
Good evening.
and Shanetta McNair.
Hey.
All right, ladies. So we just gonna jump right in. Listen, this topic we're kind of gonna be discussing, not kind of, we're going to be discussing um Roe versus Wade, our opinions on the matter, um, what we researched and learned about it, and kind of, how it affects the present day. Why are we talking about this? For people that's probably your first question. Why are I talking about that? For me, I would say the topic I felt was very important. Although it may not be a choice that I would choose for me or my lifestyle, I definitely feel like everyone is entitled to their own choice, regardless of whatever your own personal choice. And so, kind of, I wanted to talk about it. Being a woman, I think the decision in one way or another affects women all across the board, even if it's something um, that you would never do, something that would never um, directly affect you personally. I still feel like the decision, in my mind, I feel like the decision is just one step closer to, um, I don't know, taking away women's right to be the masters of their own universe. So I don't know if you ladies wanted me to start off. Shanetta, I know you said you did a little research. You want to jump in there or?
Sure. So my initial thing was we hear, we learn in social studies all the big cases that you're supposed to know, all the ones that are history landmark cases that you're supposed to know. But a lot of times we hear the synopsis and we don't really know what the details are. So when I thought about Roe versus Wade, I'm like, yeah, I know it has to do with abortion, but what happened? So I went and kind of looked to see if I could understand what took place. And I'm by no means an expert of anything related to law. Um, I just read stuff and kind of interpret it in my brain. So what I gathered, and correct me if y'all know different or if I'm wrong, um, is that the Roe versus Wade ruling that came out in 1973 was basically impacting that the federal government made it um not permissible, I guess, to prohibit, or states could not prohibit abortions. So it wasn't that it was making abortions illegal or legal. It was saying that states could not take away the right if a woman chooses to have an abortion. um Say it. Jump in.
Well, yes, yes, and kind of no, because at the time, I think more than just like now, more than 20 states had illegal abortion laws.
Right.
And so, okay, I'm gonna let you finish. Go ahead.
No. I agree with that. So I think what I understood is that Roe versus Wade prohibited states from making abortions illegal. So they had to set laws, and of course that meant that one state may say, well, you can't have an abortion after this date, and another state may say you can't have an abortion after this date. And the act of overturning that, which is what is being discussed, I guess was initially being discussed secretly and came out in the open in the last few days. The act of trying to overturn that gives the states back the power to decide whether or not abortion is legal or illegal in their state. But regardless of, in my opinion, the legality of being able to have an abortion, whether it's legal or whether it's illegal, the first thing that I would say is that it's not going to prevent women from having them.
That's true.
There are so many laws out there that come into play because of something that happened or something that occurred. And in no way is this a comparison to life. But for instance, a whole bunch of states have made it illegal to text and drive, but people still do that. So taking away the right to an abortion does not mean that abortions will just magically disappear in every single state. If every single state said, okay, well, no abortions are allowed. Nobody allowed abortions anywhere because we overturned Roe versus Wade and nobody supports abortions anymore. Whatever the case may be, it's still going to happen. But I heard one particular politician, I want to say it was Warnock, that is a representative here in Georgia. And I think the statement that I heard him say was that a woman's hospital room is not big enough for her husband, or her family, and the government. And I think that's what it really boils down to, is the government is trying to be this massive hand and this massive force in things that it probably shouldn't be in. And that's kind of where I think things get ugly and twisted. And then I saw the other video that you shared where our vice president was speaking, and she asked the question, what law do we have that tells a man what to do with his body? So it's very interesting to me that there are these laws that are trying to be put in place to say what a person can and cannot do with their bodies. And a person not being a man, a person being just women, because there are only two. It's not like there are all these different options. Really, honestly, you're either a man or you're a woman, and there are no laws that are put in place to tell a man what he can and can't do with his body. The laws are only being put in place to tell women what they can and can't do with their bodies. And that's where it's just kind of like my I don't know, my pro woman sense jumps up, and it's just like, come on, like, are we serious right now? So now, with all of that said, I'm going to tell you my stance.
Okay.
Which I told my husband earlier, I was going to make my disclaimer statement that I am saved, I am sanctified, I am filled with the Holy Ghost. I believe in God, and I believe him to be my Lord and Savior. He saved me. He has baptized me, filled me with the Holy Ghost. I am a Bible-toting believer, and I will shout and praise him with the best of them if I can and when I can, right? But I do believe that I am pro-life and pro-choice. I am pro-life because I believe, yes, like if this is a viable birth and we can bring this baby here and make this happen, yes. But I also believe that we cannot take our Christian values, because I'm pro-life because of my Christian value. But that's for me. I can't take my Christian value and tell the lady next door what she has to do and what she needs to do, because she may not be a Christian. She may not believe what I believe. So me trying to implement my belief upon her, no, she has a choice and she gets to choose what she does. She gets to make the decisions about her and her body, her and her husband, or her and her partner, or her and her family get to make that choice. I was reading, and I could probably talk for way too long on this, so y'all jump in or stop me when you feel like I've gone too far and stayed too long. But I definitely believe that it comes under the disguise of politics, and then they want to say it's the conservative choice, it's the conservative Republican choice, and that Republicans represent more of the Christian values and the Christian faith. So like we kind of try to put these things into buckets, and when it's true and honest evaluated, it's really about power and control. It's not necessarily about the party or about Christianity or about any of those things. It's about who has the most power and who has the most control. And that's how these decisions are being made. If I can push my political agenda and prove that I have more power than the other side's political agenda, then I'm going to push all the things that I know are against what the other side is saying. So it's not about the care of people. It's not about the lives of those babies mattering. It's not about any of those things. It's about power. It's about who has the most power. And they're making these decisions because they want to run stuff. They want to have this power. There are politicians that want to be a part of a landmark change. So they're trying to find a platform to be a part of this change so that their name is forever written in this history of changes that are being made. And they're not even considering that these decisions that you're making are about people's lives, and you shouldn't really get to decide what a person gets to do with their life. We're not property. A woman is not property for you to make decisions about. And I feel like that's kind of the way making these type of decisions ends up being. Now, I might be handed my Bible, my purse, and all my things and escorted out of any Christian church if I said that, because people may not necessarily agree with that. And I'm sorry. But I believe what I believe for me. My faith is for me. My choices are for me. And I get to choose how my faith is enacted. There are women who have abortions for so many reasons. And it's not just because I made a bad decision last night, had sex with somebody, and, there's that. Now I'm pregnant. That's not the only reason that women make that choice.
Right.
Sometimes it's medically needed. Sometimes there are conditions with the child where a tough decision has to be made. Sometimes there are conditions with the mother and her health where choices have to be made. Sometimes, hey, we just, we did this, don't want this. This is the, things happen. But I read a post last night where, let me see, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because it was a super duper long post, but she was saying in her post that she wasn't pro. She said, I'm not pro murdering babies. I'm pro Becky, who found out. Anatomy.
Yeah, I saw that.
So she went down the list, and it was just naming, different women in different situations and different conditions that they would experience. So it's not necessarily that you're pro, let's murder a baby, let's go out there and, take innocent lives. We can all come up with, if you do 5 minutes of research, you can come up with a list of scriptures that, say thou shalt not murder and you shouldn't do this. And, all the scriptures that support, being pro-life. But once you get done quoting all those scriptures, look at the situation and let that woman decide based on her situation what she feels like she needs to do. And that's between her soul, and God, and not us.
Absolutely. So I will say this, even before Roe versus Wade was passed, so abortion was allowed only under those conditions, only under very specific conditions. So it's like under the case of rape, you were allowed to get an abortion in most states, and if it was medically necessary, they did allow that. So those conditions were there, but but you had to prove all of that too, though. Like it was like a process. So Trina,
just kind of talking about what Shanetta was talking about. The whole narrative of pro-life and people hanging their hat on the Bible and Bible verses, and like it's so hypocritical. It's so hypocritical because first of all, these Republicans or whoever is who want to be pro-life and Bible Belt and all that stuff, let's roll it all the way back to the separation of church and state. So if you're hanging your hat on the Bible, but you still want to hang on to the separation of church and state and religious freedom, then you got to back off from that.
Right.
But also these same states that are pro-life are pro-death penalty.
Right.
Yes. Like the hypocrisy is just glaring. These are the same people who have no answer when you ask, okay, so who's going to support these children once they're here?
Right.
And if you're going to go back to the Bible, I got some scriptures for that too. What about the scripture that talks about caring for the fatherless and the widow and all of those? What about that? So let's get those scriptures and stir that into the pot too. Like, stop being so hypocritical about, oh, I'm just going to take this one Bible verse and hang my hat on that. If you're going to be a Christian all the way, you got to eat the whole loaf and all of it. So, this whole, pro-life, and if you're not pro-life, you're not a Christian. It's not that cut and dry. So let's really look at the whole thing. I feel like my stance is, if you don't believe in abortion, don't have one. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You don't believe in it, then you don't have one. So that takes out all the men. It's not your decision. You don't believe in it, you don't have one, you can't have one. Mind your business. That's my stance. If you don't believe in abortion, don't have an abortion. And that's the bottom line to me. But as far as this whole, my thing is like, why now? Why now? It's been almost 50 years. Why now? Like, what is behind this great push to overturn it? Like, I don't know, something's not sitting right with me. Like, why now? Is it a population control thing? Like, I don't know, something is not sitting right with why now. And we have to look at the fact that what has led up to it coming to a head now, because when Trump was in office, he approved the judges that are now way on that side, on the right side, right, as opposed to left, not right, as in correct. And so it seems like it was now set up to go in this direction. But like, I'm trying to figure out, like, why now? Like, what's coming? What's there? What are they trying to put in place? Is it a population control thing? Is it a thing where certain groups are not, their population is not growing and other populations are growing? I don't know. But I just question, why now? Why is there such a push now after almost 50 years of, it being in place? Like, I don't know.
I will say I totally agree with you on that, Trina. Like, why now? So when I decided I wanted to have this conversation, I wanted to research it. Like you said, Shanetta, you know the base of it. Like, it's, Roe Roe versus Wade is abortion. But I went back and I read like all of it. Like I researched exactly how it came about. And so it started with, I'm going to say, a severely damaged teenage girl. At like 13 or 14, she had already had like one kid. Of course, she was not married at the time. She had this one kid that she was very like irresponsible with or whatever. By the time she was 16, she had gotten married to somebody, wind up having another kid. She leaves that man, whatever. Her mother takes the first kid from her, takes custody of the first kid. Lo and behold, look here, she's pregnant the third time. By the time she's pregnant the third time, she's only 21, and she decides she doesn't want the kid. So that's what starts. Well, there were already people trying to, I guess, fight against the abortion laws, but they needed an actual spokesperson, somebody willing to go through the scrutiny, somebody willing to come out front. So again, this severely damaged young girl, she's like, okay, fine, I don't want this kid. She was trying to have an abortion. I mean, she was trying so hard that initially she reported to the cops that she was raped by some black men. Because in Texas, that was one of the ways you could actually get an abortion. But of course, they found out that her claims were false. So she was made to be, I guess, stuck with this kid. That was in like 1970 when it started. Of course, it took 3 years before it was overturned. She wound up being having the little girl because she was pregnant with a girl. She had the girl and gave it up for adoption. And then Roe versus Wade was put on the books. Now, from that being put on the books, there were several names, of people that made a name for themselves from this big case. You had the lawyers. I think it was Thurgood Marshall, I believe, that signed it. Like these people, like they made a career out of this big ruling. So that struck a nerve for me, because I'm like, okay, so who's trying to make a name for themselves now by having it overturned?
Yeah.
I also was concerned about the fact that they were doing all of this behind closed doors. And that kind of made me feel like, what are some of the other things that's being decided for us that we have no idea about? Mm-hmm. Like you have all these things going on, in room, behind closed doors, that affect us as a people, as a whole. Again, am I in favor of abortion? No, not like I would be recommending it to someone. But at the same time, I feel like your decision is yours and you're going to reap what you sow one way or another. Like there's a consequence, there's a reaction to every action. So I feel like your decision, you have to live with whatever comes after that. Mm-hmm. But just like I can't, if you have an abortion, it doesn't hurt me. Like, your decisions don't hurt me. Like you have to live with it. So I feel like I don't have the right to tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. I don't have that right. It's very troubling to me because I am a woman. And so if behind closed doors, you can make decisions based on how I manage my sex life, basically, like, where does it end? Like, I just feel like, it's a very slippery slope.
It definitely is a very slippery slope. I'm not sure what happened to Sam, but I guess we'll keep going. I can't hear you either. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I think I'm concerned about the next step being now it's going to be a question of, are you going to restrict my access to birth control?
Exactly.
Like, because you're saying I can't do this, but now what is the next thing? It's like, oh, you can only have this type of birth control. You can only have, then it'll be no birth control.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely where conversations like this lead to, because there are even insurance companies now that try to restrict access to certain types of birth control.
Right.
And that actually, I think behind some scenes right now is actually leading to some of those more private political conversations where it's like, well, if you stand on this bill with me, then I'll support you on this bill.
Right.
It's like they're pushing these political agendas that don't even impact, and I say that because we all know that in politics, while there are an uprising of a presence of women in politics, we know that it's still a male-dominated field. So
Absolutely.
these private agendas are being pushed by people who are not even impacted by the laws that they're trying to set or the things that they're trying to say. And that just seems wrong on so many different levels when we're talking political arenas, when we're talking like the people who are making decisions, which is why it's important for us to vote. And I know that this conversation was not about,
No, it's fine.
voting, but it's important for us to make sure that we get out and vote, because who we vote for, we need to make sure that they support what we believe and where we stand, even if they don't 100% have all of the things. They don't check all of my boxes. We need to make sure they're checking the main boxes that we need them to check when we need them to check them. Because no candidate is going to be 100% everything you want them to be. But you need to get some boxes checked so that agendas that are being pushed privately support what you are, what you look like, and who you
are. So Richard said it's definitely a very emotive subject on both sides. I totally agree with you there. It's a very emotional topic. You're going to get the people that are passionate about rights. You're going to get the people that just, like Shanetta was saying, want to be in power. You're going to get a lot, and there's going to be a lot of emotions. He said it's all quite sinister and nasty. Right. It is, the things that go on behind closed doors. The thing that I find, another thing that I found so troubling is that our country has gotten to a point where a woman or a man can walk into a hospital. A man can walk into a hospital and come out as a woman and then come and use the same bathroom I use. And it's totally okay. A man can wake up in the morning and decide that he wants to identify as a woman. And everywhere he go, people are supposed to accept him and address him as such. Like, it's troubling to me that our country, like, we're allowing people to change their God-given gender, what you were born as. We're quite fine with that. But you want to take away my choice, of what I can do with my personal, like, let's be honest, abortion is a very personal thing. Like, this is literally my body. Like you said, there's no room in a hospital room, in a doctor's office for me, Anthony, and the government. Like, and the same government that would vote against, or vote against me, having an abortion, or against somebody having an abortion, is the same government that won't help you necessarily take care of this kid once it gets here. This is the same government that if you're managed to take care of the kid till it's 18, they won't really give you enough money to send the kid to college. Like, our government, I feel like we're, as a whole, is failing us as the citizens. Mm-hmm. Like, everything has become about making a name for yourself. Shanetta, like you said, who got the most power? Oh, the Republicans are going to have the House and the Senate, and we're going to be in charge, and we're going to tell everybody what to do. It's more about that than about people. And don't get me wrong, you have people that have abortion for sport, but I feel like no matter what is going on, there are always going to be people that are going to misuse it. Mm-hmm. Even, the no matter what you do, there's gonna be people that's gonna find a way to twist it, misuse it, overuse it,
Mm-hmm.
or make it ugly. As a woman of color, it's hard enough for us just to carry a child full term and go in the hospital and have it and come out alive.
Right.
I just saw, I think it's in Atlanta, a guy is suing the hospital because his wife died during childbirth. And she didn't have any prior conditions. I feel like as women of color, like we already have all these, things against us. And now it's like you're adding, now you're going to take away something else from me. You're going to take away my right to decide how I want to live my life. Even as a believer, I believe God, I believe the Bible, but even God himself didn't force me to be a believer. The Bible clearly says, choose ye this day. Like God gives us a choice and everything. Yes, he's made it clear the requirements of living I don't even know if Christian is the right word, a saved life.
Yeah.
The requirements are clear, but he also says you have the right to choose these requirements. And if you don't choose to live by these requirements, hence there's going to be consequences, but it's still your choice. And so, for people to try to throw the Bible at you, it's like, have you read it or did you just want to chuck it? Because
Right.
if you read it, it's clear that the choice is mine. If I don't want to do any of it, the choice is mine. And God has been okay with that. He lets you live and die by your choices. And I think it's wrong in the 1960s and 70s. No. I mean, I can't say that I would be 100% surprised by some of the things that have been done as far as when it comes to the government, just experiments and different things. I mean, we've heard of different things that have been done to different groups of people. I just feel like the worst thing that could happen is at this point, now that everybody's aware of what's happening, even believers, I feel like the worst thing a believer could do at this point is to hitch their wagon to this train.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it's a slippery slope. Yeah, now they overturned that. I mean, they didn't have a problem with they weren't in favor of the Bible, when they took prayer out of schools. The Bible didn't matter then when the government stepped in and said, okay, get all your Bibles and go home. Now this same government wants to bring all the Bibles back, but they don't want to send it to the school. They don't want to send it to the office because, even still at your office, and sometimes, it's looked at and frowned upon. But now they want to send it to the hospitals.
Right.
Now they want to send it to the doctors. Oh, we're going to take it out of all these places. We're just going to send it, to the women's hospital rooms. And I just think it's a big mistake. And I think that people have to be secure enough in what you believe to be vocal about what's right.
I think that a part of the political problem is that it's kind of like what you're saying. They're double-minded. They want to be on both sides of the fence. Basically, we want these so-called Christian values, but we don't want them all. We only want a part of it. We don't want to eat the whole loaf, as Trina said. We want to pick and choose what we're going to implement into our government, which is again why this stance is not one that while the government is trying to take it, it's a personal choice. It's a private choice to involve yourselves in so many private matters. Like, it's not my business what Trina decides to do with her uterus. It is not my business what Sam is doing with her uterus. That's not my business. Like, it is Trina's business what she's doing with her body parts. And the unfortunate thing is that the government is trying to take these intrusive stances on women's rights or on a person's right to choose, to make decisions for themselves. It's almost like saying you're not smart enough to make this decision on your own, so let us make it for you. You're not capable, you're not mentally equipped to handle a decision such as this. You can't handle this magnitude of a decision, so let us decide for you. So for me, this whole thing really has nothing to do with a Christian value or a Christian stance, because I don't even think that's what they're trying to fool. If they're saying anything remotely close to that, like, oh, it's murder and we shouldn't murder. There are so many other contradictions to what we say. Trina brought it up, and it was one that I definitely had in my notes about capital punishment. And we still have states out here. We have one state who literally just said that they would implement stoning. They would go back to stoning, like, and that's a choice. Like, you can die by, I think, stoning, fire squad, and
lethal injection.
Yes. And I'm like, that sounds horrible, but they'll implement this and then say we can't do that. And I'm not one that's saying, oh yes, anybody who doesn't want, their babies, line them up and I'll do, all of their, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if I as a Christian get to make choices as to how I'm going to live as a Christian, don't try to handcuff me with government decisions that's supposed to implement my Christianity. Let me make that decision because of my relationship with God. Let me make that decision because of my heart. Let me feel that conviction upon myself that I'm going to say, this is not what I want for me. This isn't what I want for my body. This isn't what I want, for my family. But I can't tell the next lady or the next woman that this is what you want too, because we may have very different morals and values. As I get my person get put out the church, probably.
Listen, I think it's important, especially with everything we've seen in the last couple of years. I'll say in the last 5-6 years, everything that we've seen, I think it's important for us to be vigilant and mindful of everything that's going on. There's several things that happen, of course, that I don't agree with. Like, personally, it would never be a personal choice for me.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't get to manage somebody else's life. Like, I would try, in my mind, I would try to deter somebody from making that choice. But at the same time, the ultimate choice is left up to that person, as it should be. I really feel like, if we're not careful, before too long, the government will be deciding everything for us. It starts with one thing, and if they could get that, voted on and slid on in before you know it, it's a lot of backroom decisions being made. And that, for me, that's a scary place. I mean, I'm over 40, but I have children. Like, my children have to grow up and live their whole life in whatever decisions these governments are putting into place.
Yeah.
And, so for me, I'm always trying to watch to see, how things is going to affect maybe not my future, because again, I'm older, but how is this going to affect their futures?
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I said, it's not something I would ever recommend to anybody, but I feel like, people have a right to make their own choice. And as a woman, I don't want anybody telling me what to do with my body. Especially not some people that have not walked a mile in my shoes. So we're talking about a man. You have no idea what it's like to be pregnant, what it's like to be a woman. what it's like to grow a child. You have no idea what any of that's like, what it does to your emotions, to your body, to your mental stability. But you want to force that on another person. That is so, so terrible.
Yeah.
Even when after I had Alexis and I wanted I wanted to get my tubes tied so I couldn't have any more children. Mainly because it was a really hard birth, and my doctor was like, it wouldn't be healthy for you to do this again. Like this really wouldn't work out well for you. So you probably should like never do this again ever. And so we were in agreement because I was like, you're right. I should never ever again. And then the hospital was like, yeah, well, that's fine, but you can't do that here. Like they didn't that particular hospital, I think it was like a Jewish hospital or something. They don't believe in any kind of birth control measures. So I could not get my tubes tied at the same hospital that I was having him at, even though the doctor said medically, like, I should not ever get pregnant again. So that meant I had to have a kid, go through the whole 6 weeks, all of that, start to heal, all of that, for them then to have to, if I was going to get my tubes tied, have to be opened up again to have my tubes tied. Which, of course, that was going to present a whole new set of issues for me. So that wasn't viable. So we went with another option, which then a few years later turned out to be a terrible option. And I wound up having to have a hysterectomy. Now, these are just doctors. These doctors and people that run a hospital making a decision for my life and my body that did not turn out well. So just imagine the ramifications of some politicians who have no medical training, who have no idea of the full ramification of their decision. So now they're going to make a decision for women.
Yeah.
Like, it just sounds like a disaster waiting to
Waiting
happen.
to happen.
And like you said, Shanetta, women aren't going to stop, because even when it was illegal, women were having them. It was illegal, but it was people doing them in the closet at their house or on the table, wherever.
What you were saying, I thought you were gonna say that you had to get permission from your husband to get your tube ties, because that was a requirement at one point.
It is if you're under 30. It's still a requirement. If you're under 30.
This is problematic.
Right.
This is problematic because does he have to get permission from you to get a vasectomy?
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Mm-hmm. I had to sign. Too much information, but he won't care. I did have to sign when after when we made the decision. Oh, we have 5 kids. It's a lot of people. We don't want any more of those. We had to, and literally it was kind of like that personal choice decisions, and and my personal choice for myself was, well, I don't want my tubes tied. I don't want any more kids, but I don't want my tubes tied. That just felt like a lot to me, and that felt like a decision I did not want to make. And we were told in the conversations, well, either way, the spouse, because you're married, the spouse would have to sign off saying they're okay with this. So he made the decision, we're good. I'm gonna take care of this to make sure we're good. And I did have to go and sign indicating that I was okay with this decision.
Right. But if he wasn't married, because I have a friend that had one, he was not married. There was no age requirement. He just went, he made a personal decision.
Yeah,
and he got it done. So for somebody that's not married, you don't have to get a woman to sign off. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like to get it done. But like a woman, if I'm under 30, they won't even do it. Doesn't matter if I have a whole slew of kids. So like, and I get it. We have to be more responsible with how we lay down. I get all of that. I'm not negating any of the irresponsible ways that people wind up in those positions.
Right.
I'm just saying, I know, like I said, those few decisions that were made for me by other people that did not know my history, did not know anything about my body or the troubles I had, or the the terrible birth, or the high risk pregnancy. They didn't know any of that, and they still made decisions for me, which again, like 5 years later, I suffered from their decisions.
Right.
And still wind up having to have a whole nother surgery and have a hysterectomy based on, the decisions that they made for me at the time. So, I mean, I just think when you have somebody else making decisions about another person's body, it's going to be problematic. And I think that, in spite of where you stand on the issue, whether you would ever get one is not being called into question. It's about not having someone's choices taken away from them.
Yeah.
And just because something can be made into a law doesn't mean it should. Wasn't it just this year that they decided that lynching was a hate crime or was against the law? Just this year, in 2022. So we have to take full account on the things that are on the books and the things that the government consider legal and not legal.
Yeah, I would agree. I just definitely feel like we can't try to say that this is a Christian thing. This is a thing. This is a Christianity based decision, because it definitely is not. It's a power decision. It's a power move. It's a move for somebody's name to be put in the books with a landmark decision versus it really being a true decision in the interest of people, in the interest of humankind, or any of those things. And I think that it would be unwise for people to jump on the bandwagon of being a part of something that truly does not look at the entire scope of what they're doing and who it's impacting and how it's impacting different people. But I think that it's also very taboo as Christians to try to say, oh yeah, I don't support that, or to kind of, make those decisions.
Well, hi, mother. She said years ago, if marriage, you couldn't get your tubes tied unless you're right. We talked about that exactly years ago. Women just got to a place where we could kind of make some decisions. I don't know. I think that might still be on the books, though, that you still have to get consent from your significant other to get your tubes tied. Like, I just think it's awful. I think it's awful. Even as a wife, to have to depend on my husband to agree that what I do with my body, basically because he can't carry a kid. You don't have to carry them. It's easy. The easy part is there, and then we're left to do all the hard work. I don't know. I just think when I look at our country as a whole and I look at some of the things that are being done, I often feel like we can't see the forest for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're so busy. Everybody wants to make a name for themselves. Everybody wants to be, everybody wants to be the person that said the snappy thing, the quote of the day, I want to stand out. I want to be known for something that I think, we just want to be known for something. It doesn't matter if it's something that's beneficial. It doesn't matter if what I want to be known for hurts everyone else. We just don't care. Long as, I can get my name out there or get myself out there. And I think that's a very sad state. And then when we're talking about people that are supposed to be in control, having that same idea, it's a dangerous time that we're living in. The last thing you want to do is back people into a corner. That is an awful thing to do, to back anybody into a corner. That leaves people feeling like they don't have options. There's no way out. Why would you want? I would never want to be a party to making anyone feel that, regardless of whatever their personal choice is. That's not a place that I would want to be in.
I just feel like, these politicians and pro-life, they need to be more concerned with the children that are here already. Be more concerned about, a reasonable and a proper maternity leave.
Right.
6 weeks. Let's work on that. Let's work on getting a maternity leave where you can actually spend time with your newborn, without having to rush back to work
and recover.
Let's get some more funding for proper childcare.
Right.
You're struggling. You have to decide between working and staying home with you because you can't afford to pay for childcare. Let's work on that. There's so many things where children are lacking. Let's work on taking proper care of the children that are here. Get things in place for the children that are here already. Because now you want to say, okay, have this kid, but we're not even taking care of the kids that's here properly. That should be the focus.
Right.
You want to talk about we got to care about the children. It's about the kids. What about the kids that's here? We're not doing right by them already. So the focus is all wrong.
I totally agree with you. So many schools have lost funding for different extracurricular activities for the kids. There's barely any after-school programs. The cost of being in a sport has gone up. All the fees associated with those things. I think, when we were younger, there was PAL leagues.
Right.
There were several different what happened in youth centers and stuff like that. You don't see those things anymore. So I totally agree with you, Trina. What about the kids that are here? What are we doing for the generation that already exists? Like we're not giving these kids anything to help build on. Like, I don't know, even in my county, like I'm always looking for stuff. And, I have 2 kids, and to put a kid, like I was looking about trying to send the kids to camp just so they could have something to do. And it was like $300 a week per kid.
Right.
And this is
you can't afford, like you can't even afford to proper childcare for your kid. You can't afford it. And so shouldn't we be working on that? Make childcare affordable.
That's what I'm saying. We can't see the forest for the trees.
So you got children in foster care. The whole foster care system is just
right.
That's just like a whole nother show.
Right.
And so you got this whole foster care system that's just out of control and just not working. But you're going to now even add more to that. The focus is wrong. Right now.
Absolutely.
I would say one more thing, just so that when we log off tonight, there's nobody that questions in their mind whether or not the three of us are Christians, saved, and sanctified. I'm gonna give y'all a few scriptures just to remind y'all and let y'all know that we do believe in the Bible and we know what it say. We're not crazy. We just have our stance. So we know that Exodus 20 and 13 talks about not murdering, right? We know that Psalms 139, 13 through 16 talks about us being covered in the womb, and that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. We know that Jeremiah 1 and 5 tells us that God knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb or in our mother's belly. We know the different scriptures that talk about the curse of, what can happen when you don't obey God's word, when you don't live right. You can go through Numbers and find some of those curses about, the unholiness of, having sex outside of your marriage. In Psalms, it talks about children being the heritage of the Lord. We all love our children. We love the ones we have. And clearly we carried children. Each of us did carry children, and, we have them. So we understand that. And I don't want anybody to walk away from listening to this later or watching us live and to think that we're saying we're out here marching, saying, get all the abortions, and we're at the Planned Parenthood clinic saying, let all the girls in and come in and have their abortions. No, we know what the scripture says. We just believe that it's a choice that each person gets. I think that's where I stand. I'm gonna let y'all say what y'all said. I stand that it's a choice that somebody gets to make, and I can't make a personal choice for them because I am a Christian. I teach my Christian values to my daughter. I teach my Christian values to my sons, because it doesn't just apply to my daughters, it applies to my sons too. But it doesn't start with the don't have an abortion. It starts with this is how we live. We treat people right. We talk to people kindly. We love people no matter what kind of choices and decisions that they're making, because the love of God is something that covers all, and we need to make sure that we're expressing his love above all.
That's it.
So I think that even though we have a stance that may not be, the standard of, what everybody expects a Christian to say, oh no, every Christian is, pro-life and against abortion. It's a whole lot more to it than that. It's a whole lot more to it than that. And while I wouldn't make that decision, I'm not going to hate you or love you any less or mistreat you because you do make that decision. It's your decision that you get to make. And if you choose to share it with me and talk to me about it, hey, whatever your reasoning is, I'm still going to love you the same.
Absolutely. And on that note, we will see you guys next week on Thursday at 8 p.m. We thank you guys for joining us. For those of y'all that are surprised that we're on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday, you missed a few announcements. We no longer are on Tuesdays. We have moved to Thursdays at 8 p.m. So until next week, stay safe.